What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Appreciate you. Well, I appreciate you stopping by. About ready to get the show started here. Once again, we're going to keep this brief. Just a bunch of unanswered questions, you feel me? Unanswered questions, I don't like those. No. No. Not on my watch. Unanswered questions, not on my watch. Although here we kind of focus more on unasked questions, right? That's really what we focus on. Thank you for returning back to the show. We're live on Rockfin. We're live on DLive. We're also live on Twitter, Twitch. Living the dream over here, being able to restream my broadcast out to the very hungry minds of individuals that tune in. Apologies for any hiccups here in the broadcast. I think we've got this pretty much smooth. However, I do notice that occasionally on DLive the thumbnail is outdated. Little things like that, but they drive me fucking nuts, I'm not gonna lie. So I do apologize about that. Hopefully we can fix that up. Thank you for the few people over on Rockfin. We got 3 people over there. Consider following me on Rockfin, everybody. Rockfin.com/memoryhold. All the uncensored stuff. Not every broadcast to YouTube is going to be allowed to stay on YouTube, right? For instance, I might say something halfway through this broadcast that's very important, but a no-no in the eyes of Susan, Google, and YouTube. So as you can see, that puts yourself in quite the predicament if it comes to wanting to learn some good information, but being unable to do so on YouTube, right? So consider that. Rockfin.com, hit the Cointree link. We're going to talk about some unanswered, some questions that we still have remaining with this whole Utah ritual abuse thing, because the last presentation I did on this was quite lengthy, and it focused heavily on connections between the Levitt Institute of David Levitt, the World Economic Forum, and Soros. Now, I want to make it very clear. The man on your screen is a man named David Hamblin. He is the first arrest made in the Utah ritual abuse scandal. David Levitt, there is other than allegations, there is no proof that he's guilty. It very well could be some politically motivated attack on David Levitt. So I want to make this video to condense and clarify some of these points, because although those connections from the last video do exist, I want to make it very clear here, because there isn't a lot of coverage going on with this Utah stuff outside of our circles and K13, Fox News 13, that local channel that's doing the legwork. So I want to, for people that do end up searching this, I want to make it clear. Right now, David Levitt is innocent until proven guilty, has not been arrested. However, his friend and his neighbor, David Lee Hamblin, a therapist, has been arrested on part of this Utah ritual abuse investigation. But what you're going to notice, and this is where the unanswered questions come in, you're going to notice in the arrest report that I don't even know if I can read it on YouTube, guys. It's really just fucking awful. It's just disgusting, man. Like I always say, Franklin's Scandal is the only book that I ever put down, you know what I mean, halfway through. And that was the ritual abuse shit. This is the type of stuff that gets me. But my point is that the arrest record of Hamblin, what he was arrested for, doesn't actually include ritualistic abuse. It does include child abuse, but it doesn't include ritualistic abuse. So what's going on here? We have a ritual abuse investigation going on in Utah that's been spanning decades. The investigation itself, no, I'm saying the allegations, right? So this investigation that started in April of 2021 is going back all the way to 1990 for allegations, okay? However, in Hamblin's arrest record, we don't technically have any inkling of a ritual abuse thing. So where does the ritual stuff come in? I don't know. Neither do you. I don't. Nobody knows other than the investigating officers that are hopefully doing their due diligence, doing the legwork, putting in the hours, because ritual abuse doesn't come out of nowhere, guys. Especially, I guess it kind of does, and that's the issue for the other side, right? That, for instance, I'll show you this article here we're going to take a look at. Satanic panic is making a comeback, fueled by QAnon believers and GOP influencers. Baseless accusations are branding people as Satanist pedophiles at the speed of the internet. Just ask a GOP prosecutor who recently lost a re-election. Now, if you notice, we got the pentagram, we got the pizza. Oh, they included the spirals. Now, what's really sad about that is those spirals are confirmed by the FBI. So note how they're making light of this. Note how they're conflating the truth with something different. They included something real here. And yet, look how silly they're making it seem, right? Look how silly they're making it seem. So we need to be careful here. We need to ensure that we're spreading the truth. And I'm not just saying your truth. I'm saying fact-checkable, confirmable truth. Okay? So we're going to do that here on today's show. All right? And we're going to try and put some things to rest because this article was made September 14th, 2022, right before the first arrest was made. So I'd really be curious. As you can see, the last update was September 15th. So clearly he didn't update the article in time to say, yeah, someone's been arrested in connection to this. Isn't that kind of funny? He makes this Satanic Panic article. Satanic Panic is making a comeback because QAnon, and yet doesn't even update the article to include the first arrest. But here's the thing, as I said, real mysterious, because what? Well, there is no ritual abuse in this arrest of David Lee Hamblin. So let's read what the arrest report actually states itself, okay? Let's bring that up here. Or as a matter of fact, give me one moment. I might want to start with something different. Hold on. My cat got locked in my room. I didn't even know he was in here. Give me one moment. Give me one moment, guys. What are you doing, buddy? How'd you get in here? How'd you get in here? Hold on. Sorry, guy. He snuck in here and hid under my bed. Okay, where we start? Okay, yes, we want to start with, so The Last American Vagabond has been doing great coverage on this, namely Derek Brose from Conscious Resistance. He might have even been the one responsible for getting that 150-page report out to us, that victim report, which I have read most of it I've read through. Good friend of the show, Chelsea, in our Telegram chat, read through the whole thing. She's been putting in some legwork. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. So let's start off with like how this all started here. I just want to take a blurb, right? So Hamblin is the first suspect to be arrested in the Utah County Sheriff's Office investigation into reports of ritualistic child sex abuse from as far back as 1990. As I said, decades. In late May, the UCSO announced they were working with multiple county and federal agencies on the investigation, which originally began in April 2021. Okay, so before we got any movement, before we heard about this, this has been going on since 2021, okay? The investigation subsequently discovered previous reports alleging similar forms of ritualistic sexual abuse and trafficking that occurred in Utah County, Wab County, and San Pete County during the time between 1990 and 2010, okay? Hamblin was booked for 3 counts of sodomy of a child, 1 count of, R of a child. Jesus. Let's take a look at the report because we didn't do that in the last one. We got a little, I don't want to say carried away. That was a fantastic show. If you missed the last show where we covered this, you want to check that out. But I just want to get some things straight. Yeah, so as you can see the report yourself here. I can't really zoom in any further. Maybe you can read the words yourself here. Now, this man is in Provo, by the way, which is important because Provo, they call it the Provo House in that 150-page victim statement. So this is the whole report. A female victim came forward in April 2022 to report that she had been repeatedly assaulted by David Hamblin. The sexual assaults began when she was 6 or 7 in the mid-'80s. The victim's family resided in the same neighborhood as David, located in Provo. The victim stated she would regularly play with David's kids and had been babysat on numerous occasions by David. This is where I don't even know if I can continue. You'd sleep better tonight if I don't, but that's... The victim described a sex assault where she and 2 other children were forced to stand in front of David Hamblin. And basically, what you're going to see here, guys, is sadistic. I don't even mean, the very act of this is sadistic, right? But I mean sadistic in the truest sense of the term. I mean, demeaning them, calling them names, psychologically tormenting them. It's not just sexual pleasure, it's sadism, okay? When you tell a child to go head first into a rolled up sleeping bag so their arms can't move and their legs are out here. Do you understand what I'm talking about? It's torture. So the report goes further into how that happened. But here's the curious thing about this report, guys. I actually can't go any further. There's a woman mentioned in here, I believe. Here, look. The female victim recounted another assault inflicted upon her by David Hamblin. This occurred at the Hamblin home in Spring City, Utah, prior to the victim's 13th birthday. The victim entered David Hamblin's bedroom, where he was laying on his bed naked, and another adult female was present on the bed. David commanded the victim to do something with the female. How much you want to bet that unknown female, that unnamed female, is the next to be arrested if she's still alive? Who is that unnamed female? Doesn't seem to be David Hamlin's wife, does it? Or is it? Does he have a wife? I forget. I think he has a wife. And then, of course, David Levitt then comes out and says, look, I'm connected to this man. Our families are friends. He lives next door, but I have nothing to do with this. Okay? So let's just continue to see what else they say. Dude, that's a really fucked up report, man. Like, I don't know. Dude, ever since I finished editing Source Code Demons, like, I just haven't had the stomach. That shit took me months and months and months to edit. Clipping and snipping and editing and adding music and doing fades and transitions. All of the most horrific shit, Let's continue here. I just haven't been able to cover it as much. But this is too important not to cover. So according to the probable cause statement, reader discretion advised, I'll censor what I have to. A female victim came forward in April. Okay, this is basically, from the report. The statement describes additional incidents of abuse, including one involving another female adult. Exactly, right? It also notes that David Hamlin had his therapist license revoked by the state of Utah due to allegations of the same type of abuse to clients. Yeah, guys, here's the other thing. He was arrested in 2012 initially. Allegations of assault against children. And like we always end up seeing, these people get a slap on the wrist and they're allowed to proceed doing what they're doing. Right? We see it all the time. We see it with serial killers, and we see it especially with the child snatchers. Which is interesting due to how much they overlap, right? See, and it's the ritual abuse side is where you get the killers, man. You get what I'm saying? Like the Franklin Credit Union scandal. Like, think of the difference between the Franklin Credit Union scandal and Jeffrey Epstein's ring. There is no physical violence aside from sexual violence, which is physical violence. But do you get what I'm saying? Punching, kicking, stabbing, beating, physical assault, murder. That's gone from Epstein. But if you really think about it, historical precedent shows that Epstein doesn't really fit the normal pattern, right? Like, there's a lot of assault cases against children that aren't physical, bruised and bloodied, but just sexual, as if that isn't, any worse or better. But then there's other cases like this, where you get the ritual assault, or the assault with just horrible physical trauma attached to it. And that's what the Franklin Credit Union scandal was. And it's just interesting when they tell me that Epstein, he'll assault, molest, rape hundreds of underage girls, but he draws the line at murder. Yeah, he's got nothing on the line. He doesn't have the reputations of presidents and prime ministers and world leaders and world leading scientists on the line. He definitely wouldn't kill to keep his secrets, right? Or have anyone kill for. No, he just does his thing and hopes that he doesn't get caught. I mean, there's not going to be one of those guys, one of your clients, one of your people that you rent girls out to that does this type of shit. If you're Epstein, you're going to be brushing shoulders with David Hamlins of the world, right? The ones that don't just please themselves sexually, but there are wires in their brain that lead to, physical satisfaction is somehow intertwined with pain and sex, Of course you're going to run into these people. So we're led to believe Epstein just doesn't do any of this stuff, right? And maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I'm just saying. So anyway, this guy already had his fucking license revoked back in 2012. Yeah, the investigation has found that he continues to perform therapy in the form of healing circles. There's that new age bullshit. This new age guru cover for pedophilia, right? Now, of course, this is no longer the case. They're just saying that after he lost his license in 2012, he continued to do that. The UCSO Sergeant Spencer Cannon, public information officer, said, "We do anticipate more arrests, but it is a slow process. The case against David Hamlin will be prosecuted by Wab County Attorney Ryan Peters." So, again, guys, this is over 3 counties since 1990. So this is where it gets weird, because on May 31st of this year, that's when they made an announcement. They announced the investigation. The Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith, Utah County Attorney David Levitt, they held a press conference where they ended up sharing a 151-page document titled Victim Statement related to a 2012 case involving allegations of sexual abuse of children. That's when Levitt came out and just said, oh yeah, I'm named in it. But rest assured, I don't eat kids, I don't hurt them, I don't kill them, right? Levitt and several other people are named in the statement as being involved with a group practicing ritual child abuse. He claimed that sheriff's investigation was a political attack on him, right? Right before the June primary elections in Utah, hence the articles like this, Satanic Panic. Baseless accusations are branding people as satanic pedophiles at the speed of the internet. Just ask a GOP prosecutor who recently lost a re-election, right? Because of this bullshit, right? Surely. Levitt is the younger brother of a former 3-time Utah governor, Michael Okerlund Levitt. So, big people here. The father of the two men is Dixie Levitt, the founder of the Levitt Group, one of the largest independent insurance brokers in the nation. And we talked a little bit about David Levitt's connections. Again, guys, innocent until proven guilty. We have to show people this respect, right? If you were wrapped up in some horrific shit like this and were truly innocent, you would hope that people can lend an objective look at you in your case. We don't know about David Levitt right now, okay? We just don't. Is there a high chance that he is involved? Sure, but you can't even really confidently say that. Is there a chance he was involved? That you could probably get away with saying, right? Just because how often does something like this come up? And then to yield an arrest stemming from the same type of thing, report, investigation that you're named in, it doesn't look good for you, right? So the victims are only lying about your involvement, but not David Lee Hamlin's, right? It's shady, man. You know what I mean? So I don't know about that. But in the last video, we, if you missed that, go to my YouTube, go to my Rockfin, and check that out. We spoke heavily about David Levitt and the Levitt Institution. Right, on that board, on the board of the Levitt Institution is a woman named Natalie Jaresko, okay? And we spoke a little bit about Natalie. We spoke about a little bit about how David Levitt has profound connections to Ukraine. In fact, he's friends with the former leader, prime minister, president of Ukraine, right? And the woman, Natalie Jaresko, that sits on his board of the Levitt Institute is the former Ukraine finance minister. She also has worked on behalf of Franklin Templeton Associates that's named in a justice.gov report talking about money laundering to Ukraine. And there's allegations that her company specifically laundered money or helped launder money to Burisma, right? The one that Hunter Biden was involved in, which gets the Biden family wrapped in on this. We know that Ukraine had some major corruption in the past, right? But only the past. So you just wonder. And there was that other story of David Levitt. Again, innocent until proven guilty. I'm just rehashing everything that we've discovered, guys. David Levitt, through his institute, lots of connections to Ukraine. He made 2 or 3 trips there before the war unfolded, right? Broke out. Well, he went to a Native American tribe, right? Because he wanted to adopt a child. He wanted to adopt a child, but he said, look, to the chief, he said, I'm going to help you set up buffalo exportation to the Ukraine. Like, instead of going and regularly looking to adopt a child, he said, tit for tat, let's make a deal. I got mad connections in Ukraine. I can convince them to allow you to export buffalo to Ukraine. You'll make mad money. You'll look out for the tribe, and then I get the kid in return. Very shady way to go about it. And there's news articles on that, okay? Sorry, I'm looking for something here. I'll find it later. Yeah, that's it. Give me one moment. There we go. Okay, we'll pull this up in a moment. Okay, so we have that. Already very shady when it comes to children. Like looking at children as commodities to be traded or earned in return for a good trade. That's very suspect, right? Okay, so we covered that. Okay, yeah, his father. Okay. Yeah, during his press conference, David Levitt described the 2012 report as 151 pages of utter baloney and called the woman who made the allegations tragically mentally ill. He called for PIO Sergeant Spencer Cannon and Sheriff Mike Smith to resign. When contacted for comment, Sergeant Spencer Cannon told The Last American Vagabond that one of the, quote, most disturbing and disappointing aspects of the investigation was when Levitt came out and referred 5 times to the victim as tragically mentally ill. His words, he continued, to shame and blame a victim because of what he says is a mental illness is reprehensible. To say a victim is not credible because of a mental illness is beyond shameful. And that is exactly what he did, and he's right. It's fucked up. As if a mentally ill person cannot suffer. Whatever happened to believe the victim? Believe the victims, right? A little bit more about David Levitt. We talked about how he is like a Republican right-leaning prosecutor, right? But he's been one in a long string of prosecutors across the country in the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years that have been sort of on these payrolls for the left. Maybe that's a bad way to put it. I hate the right versus left thing. He's been soft on crime, in other words. We saw the Floyd riots. We saw that they want to get rid of the bail bond system or whatever it is. We saw these NGOs, these nonprofits paying for the bail of the rioters, right? This is the kind of game he's playing into, it seems like. And it looks like he's been criticized for his soft position on crime for a very long time now, preceding all of these accusations. And now this makes sense because in that previous video, we also talked about his Soros connections. Not only did Soros handpick Natalie Andreescu, who's on his board, the Ukraine finance minister, but there's also some interminglings between Soros company and David Levitt's foundations, which makes you wonder, because don't you remember the old thing that with Soros is he's putting all these people on his payroll, right, to sort of be soft on crime and destabilize, certain elements of society in that way. And not all of it's conspiracy, because we also talked about how much Soros was linked up with the Ukraine and how the entire thing was basically constructed by him, at least in part, right? We talked about putting in place election, anti-election meddling things. We talked about how Soros bankrolls these channels, these media channels, to talk only about pro-Western propaganda for Ukraine, to bring the youth. He's funding, among other NGOs, right? Funding the protests on the ground, societal destabilization, in other words. That's the game Levitt is into. I'm not saying him specifically. I'm saying he's rolling with some pretty high-level people when it comes to geopolitics and the stabilization and destabilization and overthrow, potentially, of a country that we're seeing now. So this is some big stuff, guys. So we can now confirm that the 2012 case mentioned by Levitt and Smith was related to David Hamblin. Look at that. So all the way back in 2012, David Hamblin is also involved, right? In 2012, Hamblin was arrested on similar charges to the ones he faces now. The Utah Daily Herald reported at the time, quote, a Provo man was arrested earlier this week on several rape charges stemming from incidents in the 1990s. David Hamblin is being charged with 12 counts of rape of a child, 3 counts of sodomy, 1 count of attempted sodomy, all first-degree felonies, and 2 counts of aggravated abuse of a child, a second-degree felony. The charges are based on events that reportedly happened between 1991 and 1998. Charges against Hamblin would be dismissed without prejudice in 2014, meaning they can be refiled again, as we saw this week. Despite David Levitt's claims that the accusations by one of Hamblin's alleged victims were utter baloney or ludicrous, courtroom audio recordings obtained by KSL investigators shed some light on the dismissal of 18 felony child sex abuse charges against Hamblin. First, Levitt told KSL that his predecessor, prosecutor David Sturgill, dismissed the case because, quote, the allegations were so untenable and so unbelievable. But as KSL reports, his statements do not line up with the court proceedings. Guys, this is important. When I knew that this case was going to heat up is when it was exposed that he was lying. Why would he lie about a certain piece of documentation that it's really hard for me to explain? Basically what they were just saying, he said that his predecessor, David Sturgill, dismissed the case because the allegations were untenable and unbelievable. Okay? But that's actually not what happened. Quote, the allegations are some of the worst allegations of sexual abuse that I've come across in the many years that I've been prosecuting these types of crimes, or these cases, Sturgill said during a hearing in May 2013. KSL notes that at the time, or at this same hearing, defense attorney Michael Esplin recognized the gravity of the accusations, stating, quote, If Mr. Hamblin is convicted of these charges, he will never see the light of day. I mean, he'll be there for the rest of his life in prison. KSL notes that neither the prosecution nor the defense shared concerns during the hearing that the allegations were outlandish and unbelievable. Do you understand? So Levitt, perhaps out of desperation, just lied and said it was thrown out because it was that stupid, that outlandish. You guys really believe this victim? There is no such thing as ritual abuse. That's outlandish. That's why they dropped the case. No, David, that's actually not why they dropped the case. In fact, you heard it for yourself, what the courtroom proceedings said, what these people said, what Sturgill said, that the gravity of the crimes were just so horrific, this guy's going away forever. So, no, KSL called him out for those lies and said, no, neither the prosecution nor the defense said, this might be fake. So why are you lying about something that's blatantly provable? It's one thing to say, look, I'm not wrapped up in this. I don't do this. I'm innocent. Okay, innocent until proven guilty. Let's let the system work, and then we'll see soon enough whether that's true or not. But then he took it further and said it was ruled out, eliminated, thrown out because of its outlandish and untenable nature. And yet that is a straight up provable lie. Instead, it appears the case was eventually dismissed, not because it was outlandish and unbelievable, but because of difficulties in obtaining records and taking victim statements. That's a big difference from why David Levitt says it was thrown out, right? So what's the motive to lie for that reason? Why not just say it was difficult to get records? No, he had to say it was that unbelievable. Well, that's a lie, David. And if you're innocent, you shouldn't lie like that, right? Lying's not a crime, sure. But you should be as transparent as possible. And when you lie in the course of an investigation like this, it looks a little shady, don't you think? At a hearing in March 2014, former Utah County Attorney David Sturgill moved to dismiss the charges to potentially refile the case at a later date. Quote, there's a lot more that needs to be done with this case, and it's not coming together, Sturgill said. I'm getting resistance from DCFS, the Division of Child and Family Services, and then there's other medical records that we're having some trouble gathering. A lot of it's due to just the age of this case. It's, an extremely delayed disclosure. What's funny is, despite his efforts to derail the investigation as baloney, Levitt has created more interest in his potential role in the case. So what exactly is in the victim's statement, and how does it relate to Levitt? Give me one moment. The document in question is labeled as victim statement number 3. On page 49 of the document, we see mention of David Levitt as being involved in a prostitute house. So let's go there. So this is a report, guys, filled with the most disgusting shit you can ever imagine. One moment. Shit. My computer's slow as shit, guys. My bad. Okay, we're almost there. 48, 49. Okay. There it is. Okay, so here. Basically, each individual story that this victim brings up starts off with one of these boxes here. Experience number, title, date and time, location, frequency, people involved. Okay? And here she lists people involved, David and Rosie Hamblin and David Levitt. And then in this box where it says other occurrences, times, and locations, she says this happened at nearly every party or when people came over to our homes. However, the frequency refers to how many times this happened with David Levitt. This also happened when we were at parties or, with other group members, like when we were at Gordon Bowen's house for a few different parties. So, and I'm going to get into this a little bit, but our good friend Chelsea, if she's watching right now, she's been going through and putting in some major legwork, taking the names, for instance, like this Gordon Bowen guy. Again, innocent until proven guilty. I'm not saying any of these people are guilty other than David Lee Hamblin. And even then, he was arrested. He's not, whatever. It's really interesting because you can look up who Gordon Bowen is right now. All of these other people mentioned here, you can look them up. And what Chelsea has identified is that a lot of these people are artists. Like, one is a sculptor. They make little clay sculptures. Another one is in like the film or the visual arts, right? It's just really funny how all of these are artists. And where have we seen that before? A lot of sickos in the art world, man. I guess they get creative when it comes to their crimes. It's disgusting, right? So let's read a little bit about this. I really don't think we can read, you know, a lot. But look, okay, this is the one that apparently involved Levitt. The victim writes as follows. In order to obtain more suitors, Redacted brought us to parties and put us on display for any potential clients to see. This display was often in the form of musical performances. When we were at these parties, including in Redacted's home, all of us were ordered to touch people's private parts. Redacted rewarded us when we touched adults' areas, as well as when we gained clients. Sometimes our reward would be candy, gifts, new pets, money in our bank account, or other things. One time at a party where Redacted was serving cake and ice cream, Redacted came up to me and started handing a plate of cake and ice cream to me, but then pulled it away and asked me if I had invited Dave back so the two of us can play. He was referring to David Levitt. Redacted called him Dave. I shook my head no, and then he told me to make sure David L. was coming back before I could have some cake. I didn't ask him, but David H. told Rosie, and Rosie took my arm and pulled me as she went over to David L. and said something like that I had said the cutest thing, and told him that I wanted to come back soon so that I can play with him alone. David L. grabbed me around the waist and said that he would love to do that. And kissed me on the forehead. Rosie walked away. On the way out, David L. said to David H. that he was going to stop by in the next couple days, so David H. is Hamblin. Every time after we had a client over, Rosie would take notes down of what happened and what methods they used. She kept a file on each person. Interesting, she kept a file on each person. Rosie, David, Richard, and Karma would not always tell us their friends or their clients' names if we didn't already know them. I would often ask the clients their names because I was usually trying to plot a way to get out of the situation and wanted to get information. I also would look through the files she would write about them to try and identify who they were. It was rare that it was unlocked, so I didn't always get to look through. She kept many files which had these people's information in it, in the gray file cabinet in the bedroom, as well as a large brownish pinkish file cabinet in the room next to their bedroom in Provo, what they call the Provo house. She had them in plastic file containers in her bedroom. Just fucking crazy. So what does that file thing sound like, guys? I mean, I'm not going to jump to conclusions here, but yeah, apparently this woman kept files on these fucking people. Is that blackmail? Could that be blackmail? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know what it is. But yeah, here's the original 2012 article, I think. December 22nd, 2012. Provo man arrested on multiple rape charges. I'm going to check comments here in a second, guys. Thank you for hanging out. Remember to share this video, guys. Help get this story out. Help support the show. For those that have recently thrown a tip my way, I really appreciate you on that. If you wish to do so, there's the Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, or you can do a tip on Rockfin, or you can subscribe $9.99 a month or $100 a year. Get my exclusive content. You get everyone else's on the platform, too. Pretty neat. Let's see what this little thing is.
We are learning more about the man arrested in Utah County on suspicion of ritualistic child sex abuse and his ties to Utah County Attorney David Levitt, who will not be allowed to prosecute this case.
Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbets has tonight's update.
Well, there are a number of reasons why the Utah County Attorney's Office might have a conflict of interest. Not just because Levitt named himself as a suspect earlier this
Hey, good look. Thanks for restreaming that on Twitch, man. I appreciate you.
year. He's also given multiple statements about his relationship with Hamblin and some of the alleged victims. As you're about to see, the nature of those statements have changed over the past 2 years.
Would you mind riding in the back of a police car?
Men and women allege David Hamblin used positions of power as a father, a therapist, a neighbor, and as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to ritualistically abuse children. He was arrested Wednesday morning, but investigators say he probably won't be the only one.
I have nothing to hide.
Until Hamblin's arrest, Fox 13 News chose not to identify any of the subjects of the investigation, but that did not stop Utah County Attorney David Levitt from outing himself as a suspect in June.
Can't make this shit up. Let me do a sound check. I never turn up the desktop volume. Okay, we're good.
And describing his relationship with Hamblin.
I prosecuted the therapist in Juab County for poaching a deer. He poached a deer to use for ritualistic purposes. This therapist was...
Ritualistic purposes. I didn't hear that, actually. That's crazy. I didn't hear that that was for ritualistic purposes. It's wild, man. Toxic Creep over on Rockfin says, it's good to see something finally actually happen with this. Thanks, Memory. Keep fighting the good fight, bro. Hey, man, you too. As long as you guys are tuning in, helping spread the word. Like I said, getting this into the mainstream consciousness is our #1 objective with this channel. It's helping assist new people in finding the resources and the information they need to come to a educated, the best educated conclusion they can, right? And that's what we do on this channel, or at least we try our best to. We have some fun along the way as much as we could when we deal with subject matter like this, but usually in episodes like this, there's not many laughs to be had. However, the only good thing that comes from this is hopefully we can educate. And they had a pretty good idea in that Utah report from '92 in ways to prevent this type of thing, right? You need educators in elementary schools educated about this, right? Teachers educate. You need local law enforcement educated on this. Now, of course, we know the way these work, right? These rings. If it is a cult, I don't know, but they tend to infiltrate these positions, right? The police officers tend to be involved in some way. We saw that in the Franklin Credit Union scandal and Alicia Owens, I believe, right? Look what happened to Alicia Owens when she came out. And they just harassed the fuck out of her. And I'm pretty sure that was a Fed that was calling her or something like that. I forget the story exactly. But at the very least, if we have those regulatory mechanisms in place already, it might make it more difficult for these embedded creeps to get away with it, right? If we can educate, because there's likely more good guys than there are bad guys. It's just the bad guys are in key power positions. For instance, David Levitt, innocent until proven guilty, guys, but David Levitt disbanded the Special Victims Unit during his time. So you see, key power positions that are directly a decision able to be made by one man to disband the Special Victims Unit that affects the lives of many other law enforcement beneath him. So now, instead of a Special Victims Unit for sex crimes, those cases have to be distributed across the board to all these officers, aka higher workload, non-specialized team looking into a highly specialized crime. Therefore, the efficiency in solving these cases dropped, the rate in which they get solved is dropped. I mean, there's a number of things. So if you have someone like David Levitt, who may or may not be guilty, but if you have one that is guilty in a position like David Levitt, you see what he can do to directly benefit, right, the ring that he's involved in, right? Hypothetically, if David Levitt is involved in this, disbanding the SVU is a good idea for these predators, right? And you didn't need the entire police force. You didn't need your entire office to do that, right? Only Levitt. Why? Because he's in a key power position, okay? And evil is compartmentalized within these organizations. It's not the entire FBI that's evil. It's 5%. 10 out of 1,000. As long as those 10 are involved in positions that dictate responsibilities of other people, right? So that's kind of how those things go.
My elders quorum president in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was my neighbor. I had a family connection.
During that same press conference, Levitt described his accuser as tragically mentally ill.
That's bullshit.
She's one of the same women who accused Hamblin and others.
Shame on you for doing that. It's uncalled for. He said tragically mentally ill woman 5 times. To attack their mental health status as a way to discredit them, and it was clear that that's what he was doing, and that's just not okay.
There is no organized ring of abuse. It was debunked.
How are you so sure? You should only be positive that you're not involved, right? How would you know that no organized ring existed? All you should say, David, is I have no idea what any of this means, no idea where it came from. I'm the nicest guy in the world. But to go so far as to say that no, it wasn't an organized ring, and then he catches himself, it's been debunked. No, just say you're not involved if you're not. Or even if you are, just say I'm not involved. But you have to go that extra step further and say, no, this is all debunked, right? Just unfucking believable. So with that said, guys, let's go ahead and navigate over to this wonderful article here that makes fun of the true, confirmably true FBI pedophile symbol here, right? Look how wonderful that is. That little spiral right there. Yeah, that's to be laughed at. A spate of recent examples in which individuals have been targeted with accusations of Satanism or so-called ritualistic abuse mark what some see as a modern-day version of the moral panic of the 80s. Right. And where did that moral panic come from? Was it overblown? It certainly was. In a way that overblown in the sense of when you get all these people focusing suddenly on heavy metal and Marilyn Manson, yeah, it's overblown because that becomes a whole different thing. Notice the disinformation work. Again, that's speculative, but I look at that as disinformation. You have true cases, and even though they still say to this day that, groups like the Finders Cult in the 80s weren't as bad as they made it out to be, or groups like the Franklin Credit Union scandals debunked a carefully crafted hoax is how they put it. Yeah, not everyone thinks that. Echoes through the ages, guys. You hear the same story over and over and over, and it culminates sometimes into something like Satanic Panic, where they write it all off. All of them are created equal. And then before you know it, you have evangelicals on morning talk shows talking about how Metallica is devil worship. And meanwhile, these people go on living their lives, abusing their kids, no problem at all because you didn't read the fucking subject matter, you dumb bitch. Sorry. Little outburst there. Sorry about that. Satanic Panic is making a comeback. Is it? Badly timed article, being as this was written right before Dave Hamlin was arrested. Provo, Utah. On June 1st, David Levitt, the prosecuting attorney for Utah County, stood behind a lectern in his windowless Provo office before a gaggle of reporters. Wearing a gray suit and an exasperated look, he wanted to make something categorically clear. Neither he nor his wife were guilty of murdering or cannibalizing young children. This looks like a very long article, guys, so obviously I'm not going to get into nearly all of it. It was, by all accounts, a strange declaration from the progressive Republican prosecutor. Yes, progressive Republican. A Mormon, he's a Mormon, and younger brother of former Utah Governor Mike Levitt, who had earned a name for himself by prosecuting a well-known polygamist. Oh, shit, was that, Whoops, I didn't mean to click out of that. I forget what polygamous thing that was. So anyway, I actually don't really want to.
Remember this phrase from the 1980s, satanic panic? It was sort of shorthand for a slew of false accusations that children were involved in satanic rituals.
Yeah, well, now the conspiracy is making a comeback online, and this thanks to groups like QAnon. You know that name. NBC News senior reporter Brandy Zadrozny covers extremism and the internet for us and joins us now. So, Brandy, in your story, you highlight the story of a Republican who's running for re-election in Utah. Help us understand the connection here.
Well, this Republican prosecutor was running for re-election in Utah. He was the top prosecutor. He was pretty progressive. Some people labeled him soft on crime, but he was an upstanding Mormon guy, pillar of the community. And what had happened was these old allegations made in the 90s and the early aughts were sort of brought up again by political.
Sort of brought up again, these old allegations of a little bit of rape, a little bit of cannibalism. These old allegations, they're old. It's past their expiration date.
Foes by someone who he was extraditing from another country and weaponized against him. These allegations are wild. They are very unlikely to be true.
Okay. A couple weeks later, David Lee Hamlin was arrested in connection to this investigation.
And unfortunately, what happened was people got them in public records requests and spilled them all over the internet. He had to come forward into his real life and say, neither I nor my wife, who is a professor at BYU, is.
Oh, what does your wife do again? Hold on. Give us one moment here. Let's look at his wife. What's his fucking... Does anyone know the wife's name? She does some interesting work. Hold on, I really want to pull this up, guys. Does anyone have that? Let me check my... Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, sick. I've got all the comments in one spot. I'm an idiot, boys. Yes, thank you. Meowry. I remember that name. Okay, hold on. Shalom Levitt. So let's take a look at what this woman looks into. Again, innocent until proven guilty, guys. Innocent until proven guilty. We're not saying the sweet old Shalom Levitt is guilty of anything. Nor are we saying that David Levitt is. But let's just take a look to see what Shalom Levitt, works on. Here's her website. Shalom Levitt. Teaching kids about sex. Young children's... Oh, so there's subsections. Teaching kids about sex. Young children, 0 through 7. Children, 8 through 12. Teens, preparing kids for marriage. Dr. Shalom Eastwood Levitt grew up in Yakima, Washington with 7 sisters and 1 brother. One of the first day of law school, Shalom met David Levitt, and they married after the first year of law school together. In 2010, Shalom was invited to be a Fulbright Fellow in Ukraine and teach in Shevchenko University in Kiev. She also ran a research study in Ukraine on how religious and secular traditions were associated with couple and parent-child relationship well-being. Shalom Levitt received her PhD from Penn State. She is an assistant professor at Brigham Young University. She studies healthy sexuality and committed relationships and focuses on how mindfulness during sex may be associated with positive outcomes for both men and women. Dr. Levitt's work on sexual mindfulness includes an intervention to teach couples how to be mindful during sexual experiences. This is fucking strange, man. Let's go to the teaching kids about... How do you teach a 0-year-old child about sex? Confronting child sexual abuse is number 1. This didn't happen to be released, I don't know, somewhat recently, did it? Interesting. Doesn't give us a date when this was made. So I just thought that was interesting. Early and often. Talking to your young child about sex. You have to do it early. You have to do it often. On one occasion, a mom asked me when and what to tell her 8-year-old daughter about sex. I described a comfortable environment and a few ideas that should be included. Another woman listening in piped up, well, you should never give them more info than what they are comfortable with. Although I did not immediately respond to this one, my answer would be yes and no. Jesus Christ, man. Again, doesn't mean anything. Not necessarily. Not yet. But if this is true, that's a very interesting thing to be involved in, right? Checking the comments here, people. Freud was a sicko himself. Yep. Then you got the Kinsey fella. The Tuttle reference. Oh yeah, True Detective. Multi-generational amongst Australian elite, yeah. It's fucking crazy, guys. And let's not forget, guys, that Ukraine is like trafficking capital of that region of the world. I mean, we have Hunter Biden in the Senate report. They observed that Hunter Biden seemed to be overlapping with the same mob syndicate that was also trafficking, prostituting women across these borders. We also see that on Instagram. My research into quite honestly, I'll give myself, I don't know if anyone else has done as much research into the Instagram surface web pedophile problem as I have. A lot of them are Russian. A lot of them are from Ukraine, specifically the Ukraine too. I made that clear in my Source Codes Demons video. And lest we forget, we'll end it off in a little bit here, lest we forget this story. I thought I had the video queued up. You might remember another Utah story that I covered heavily in my Pizza for Your Family documentary, part 2. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. You might recall another Utah story from not long ago. Come on. Load.
We are following breaking news. In about an hour, Maricopa County Assessor Paul Peterson will face a judge for the first time.
So this is the guy who decides exactly how much your home is worth for tax purposes. Well, tonight, Peterson's been indicted on adoption fraud charges. Right now, his office and his home in Mesa, they're being raided. We've got a team
adoption fraud, huh? Sort of just how David Levitt wanted to adopt that kid in a mad, weird way.
Coverage tonight at both places.
And let's begin with Brianna Whitney. She is live outside of his house. Brianna?
Yeah, just about 15 minutes ago, investigators wrapped up what they were doing out here, and they actually were bringing out files from his home. Something else we learned tonight, too, the Utah Attorney General was also involved in this investigation, as well as the Arizona Attorney General. And Paul Peterson was arrested in California today and brought back to Arizona here tonight. One neighbor who didn't want to go on camera said the Petersons were on vacation in California. So I want to step out of the scene here. There's not much here left, but I want to show you what was going on just about 30 minutes ago as investigators were bringing out files, boxes, and other pieces of evidence from this home. Here's what we know so far. Paul Peterson and Linwood Jeanette, a woman he worked with, are indicted on 32 counts. 11 of those are felony offenses, including human smuggling, sale of a child, and communications fraud. Now,
So I should make clear, this is a little bit of a different type of story. So when they say smuggling, we're talking more about like a voluntary thing. Now, I'm not going to say I'm a professional, okay? So let's just make that clear, right? I can know as much as you do just from remotely researching this. But there's trafficking, which can be against the person's will, right? And then there's like smuggling, which technically I think can be against a person's will. But the Paul Peterson story is like voluntarily taking these women that want to leave the Marshall Islands and funneling them through his adoption agency stuff. And we know that these people get their hands involved in this adoption stuff, right? We've seen that multiple times between Maccabee, Silsby. Who else is involved? Jeff Caskey, the father of Cameron Caskey of the Parkland school shooting. You remember? He was involved in adoption fraud as well because there wasn't proper paperwork for these kids in the Congo. And he was also connected to another one. He's actually connected to Laura Silsby, by the way, because one of the babies that was unfairly taken from the mother, they drugged this mother in the hospital and had her give up her parental rights, even though the father was like waiting to see the child. So they gave this baby away. And it turned out they gave this baby away to a personal family friend of Laura Silsby, who used to work together with this guy at Hewlett-Packard and personalshopper.com. How crazy is that? And where was Laura Silsby from? I forget. Was she from, I always mix up where she's from. Idaho. Yeah, they're from Idaho, so that's different. I always mix up. I don't know why I want to say she's from Utah, but yeah, so that's a whole thing to look into. If you guys aren't educated on Silsby and how that connects to pizza stuff, you should look into that. Or once again, watch my documentary on Rockfin, Pizza for Your Family, Part 2, Connections to the Convicted. So, guys, just another day, once again, another horrific story. So you're going to want to look into this. Props to Last American Vagabond for keeping up with the story and giving us this paperwork here. As you can see, 150 pages. 150 pages of the most horrific shit you can ever imagine. And what would be good practice is, number one, always remembering innocent until proven guilty. But number two, you might want to look into who these people are, just like Chelsea did in Telegram, right? There's lots of names here. And for now, we're going to have to figure out where the ritual abuse comes into play, because it hasn't yet. We know David Lee Hamblin was arrested for it, or at least assault towards a child, but where does the ritual abuse really come in? Okay? So guys, with that said, I really appreciate you stopping by. If you want to support the show, you can do so by throwing me a tip and following me here. Follow me on Rockfin, rockfin.com/memoryhold. I also have a new YouTube account, Memoryhold 5.0. Go check that out. Keep the Cointree link in the description on hand, guys. All my links in one spot. So Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, right over there if you want to help your boy out. But other than that, man, you know, we're going to keep a very close look at this case. We don't know if they're going to do a press conference yet or not. They said, if we reschedule. I don't know if we're going to reschedule, so that's a little concerning to me. Will the woman in the Hamblin report be arrested? I don't know. Questions to ask, but until next time, I'll see you guys later. Down